So it's been about 1 year since I quit my job and went full-time as a solo indie app developer. And I made a video about that last year. If you want to watch, I'll link that. I don't know which side it goes on, but it'll be linked. It's been a very interesting year. And in this video, I kind of wanted to just reflect on how the year's gone. You know, what's been the good stuff, the bad stuff, some things I've learned. And I actually have a ton of questions that I kind of put something out on social media to see if people had questions. And there was a lot of questions, so I'm going to answer those in this video too. So if you're interested in how my first year has gone as a solo indie app developer, then keep watching. Some really quick context if you've never watched any of my videos before. So my name is Sean. I'm an app developer. I work on an app called Sofa, which helps you to be more intentional with your downtime. You can make lists of books you want to read, movies to watch, video games to play, all that kind of stuff. And on this channel, I tend to kind of just document my process and my journey with being an indie app developer and making my app. So if you like that kind of stuff, then, stick around or maybe subscribe. All right, so let's talk about the good stuff. And honestly, most of the stuff is good. And what I'm about to say, it's not really in any particular order. Just kind of as I'm thinking of it. But I do genuinely love what I do. The fact that I get to wake up every day and focus and think about and work on the things that I want to work on without someone above me kind of giving me orders and work to do and direction and stuff like that. It's something that I've wanted for a really, really long time. And the fact that I get to do that every day, and that's basically been the past year for me, has been amazing, and not something that I definitely don't take it for granted, because for most of my life I've worked for other people, and being able to literally work on the things that I want to work on, or that I think are important or worth spending time on and worth thinking about, it's amazing. And it's probably one of my favorite things. So the next thing is time flexibility. And right now I'm out. I have to run an errand, and what time is it? It's almost 11 on a Tuesday. And yeah, just run the errand. Not a big deal. I don't have to let anyone know what's going on. I don't need to move meetings around. I can just kind of go do it, and my day can adjust accordingly depending on what I need to do that day. And I mean, having control over my time, and that's like a dream for, I know, a lot of people, but it's something that again, I don't take it for granted, being able to just have control over my day and what my day looks like, and being able to adjust that schedule very easily, and to say, oh, okay, I got to run out and do this thing, no big deal, I'm gonna go do that, is again, it's amazing. I'm gonna be saying amazing a lot in this video. Sorry. Another thing is I get to work at a much more natural pace that suits me better. So again, I worked in client services or consulting for a long time, and deadlines are very real and they're very frequent. And honestly, most deadlines they're just made up. Like someone at the top just made a deadline, and then everyone has to hustle to hit it. And those artificial timelines created by people who don't necessarily understand the mechanics of getting there that's something that people deal with every day, and it's really hard. So the fact that I can work at a much more natural pace, and I do set deadlines for myself, but I don't set it. I'm not going to say oh, I'm going to hit this deadline in 6 months, because it's all right, well, 6 months from now it's a long time. I will set deadlines once I feel confident that I can get there, and that's usually a few weeks out, maybe a month out or something like that. But up to that point, it's definitely much more flexible, and I work again, at a much more natural pace for me. I like to work very slow. So the next thing is I have no meetings, like zero. I've had I guess technically a couple over the past year, probably less than 5. And that's more just like catching up with people over Zoom or whatever. And that is such a dramatic change from what my day-to-day looked like before. Because the last couple years I was at, my role in my job, I was a manager. So I managed a team of people, and then just, most of my time was in meetings, and meetings have their time and place, but it is so nice to have, it feels like a luxurious amount of heads down time to just work on stuff and to think about stuff and make stuff. And it's great. It's amazing. Now the next thing is that I feel like I work one job now, which is actually true, because I do work one job now. So for years, I was basically working 2 jobs. So I started working on Sofa back in 2015, and in 2017, I took over like the full-time development of it. And, doing that plus a full-time job is a lot. And, anyone who does like stuff on the side, they know that it's very hard and very challenging to keep a consistent schedule with that, and to keep up good work over a long period of time. And there were periods where it was like way too much, and I wasn't able to focus on Sofa as much as I wanted to, because I didn't want my primary job to suffer. And just being able to literally have one job and to focus on that, and to I think about it all the time, even when I'm not working. I try not to, but it creeps up. Man, it's great. It just feels like way less pressure on me, and I feel like I'm able to do better work for Sofa and for the other things that I'm kind of working on and planning on doing. So there's probably a lot of other good things that I'm not thinking about, but the last good thing I can think of is that in the past year since I've gone full time, the business has essentially doubled, and that there's probably a lot of factors for that, and a lot of reasons going into it. It's not like I just started the business a year ago. Like, the business has existed, like Sofa as a product has existed since 2015. And it's had the subscription for about 3 years at this point. So I've been able to build up the brand over time, improve the product over time, and get more people knowing about it. So it wasn't like I just started from scratch last year. But the business has doubled in just the past year, and I think being able to focus full time on it, and again, being able to focus on like really big improvements to the app with the Sofa 4.0 release back in April, I think that's a big part of it, because people are able to see that I am invested heavily in this product, and I want to keep improving it over time. And that gives them the confidence to be like, what, I am going to support this. I'm going to pay. I'm going to, whether it's monthly or yearly or whatever. And I think it has a big part of that. What am I trying to say? I think me going full time has contributed a lot to the growth of the business financially. Okay, so let's talk about some of the bad stuff. And it's actually kind of hard because there's really not that much bad about this. And for me, right, remember, all this stuff is my personal experience here, so it's going to be different for everybody. But I would say the first thing is not having coworkers. That might sound a little weird because I quit my job, which was full of coworkers, to do something by myself. And I
I love working by myself, and it's something I enjoy quite a bit. But it is fun to work with other people. That is something I enjoy, and I think it's not even just like an enjoyment thing. Like, it's fun to make friends and build relationships and see people during the week. So I do miss that, and it's something that, like, that's just one of the trade offs of doing something like this. But there's other stuff where it's like I don't have any coworkers to bounce ideas off of, or help me when I'm like stuck on something, whether it's like a coding issue or a design problem, or just like thinking through strategy, right? Like, hey, what are some of the next big things I should be working on for the app? And having just myself without coworkers that's hard, right? That's definitely a downside. Weirdly enough, for some things, specifically the coding stuff, I have found tools like ChatGPT and Claude, these AI chatbot type stuff. They've actually been more helpful than I expected. So I think these tools are really good with code. I'm not just like copying and pasting stuff that I get from them, but I've had a number of challenging bugs that I was trying to work through where Google searches were just not cutting it. And, it would take me to Stack Overflow or to the Apple developer forums or something else. And it was very hard to kind of piece things together, or I just wasn't finding stuff. And I've found ChatGPT and Claude to be very helpful in giving me a good direction to pursue, to like investigate further, right? Hey, the issue could be related to this here, and then I was able to solve some bugs, which, specifically when I was using I had to write a lot of NS predicates and subqueries for all the smart list stuff that's in the app, and the documentation for that stuff with Apple is pretty minimal. So I was like looking at stuff from like the early 2010s, and ChatGPT and Claude were like pretty amazing at helping me figure stuff out when I was stuck. So that was nice. It can be useful in some ways, strategy wise. I've tried to use it for strategy stuff to help me, like almost to be like a devil's advocate, to help me think through something. It does okay with that stuff. But I feel like a lot of times the answers tend to be very, I don't know, like clinical in a way, almost like textbook. And that's not always what you're looking for when you're trying to think through strategy for future products or future features for an existing product, that kind of thing. So again, it's a major downside of not having coworkers, that you just have to figure this stuff out by yourself. The other bad thing, and again, this is a trade-off with this stuff, is that I'm never really off. And specifically when we travel. So over the past year, we have taken a few trips, and I always have to bring the laptop with me because, just in case there's some horrible bug and I need to fix it. Like I what are you going to do? I'm the only person that'll fix the bug. So that is a downside, because I'm never fully like off from work. But what I've tried to do to kind of mitigate that is this is easier said than done, but I try to have, like, if I'm working on a major project, I try and have that work done before I leave for a trip. And there was twice in the past year that just didn't happen. I had to stop to leave for a trip, right? And I kind of had to stop the momentum that I had for specific features, and coming back from vacation and jumping back into like a heavy feature was not was not simple, right? Like I would have preferred to have everything wrapped up before that, but what are you going to do, right? Because I can estimate how long something's going to take to work on, but sometimes it takes longer. And what are you going to do? So when I travel, I exclusively just like check email, like basically like customer support, and I'm very light with that stuff. But I'm not like working on vacation, as in actively designing or developing or writing code, that kind of stuff. But I do have to bring the laptop just in case something happens, which, of all terrible things, it's really not that bad. And again, like, this is the bad section, and I'm struggling to come up with stuff because honestly, things are pretty dope. All right, so now let's talk about some of the things that I've learned, I guess. I don't really know what to call this section, but things I've learned. So when I initially went full-time last summer, in that video that I posted, I talked about how, now I have all this time because I'm going full-time. I'll be able to do weekly YouTube videos. And I tried that for a few weeks, and holy crap, gang, that's pretty hard. Basically, it was like YouTube and Sofa, so like the act of like working on the app and doing YouTube. I'm still figuring that stuff out. I think like those are kind of like the two core things, and but like when it really comes down to it, Sofa is the priority. Like that is my main chunk of work. And if I have to choose between doing a YouTube video and working on Sofa, Sofa's going to win. And that's how it has to be, and that's okay. And I don't think I appreciated how much time the YouTube stuff would take, which it may sound weird because I've been doing YouTube videos for a while now. And I thought I would have a better estimate of that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll be able to keep working on Sofa and do one YouTube video a week. But I think the biggest struggle with that is the stuff with Sofa can take, it kind of ebbs and flows in the workload. So there's times where the workload is a little bit lower, like after a big release, where maybe I'm just doing bug fixes and kind of prepping for future work. But then there's times where like the workload is super heavy, and I don't want to stop for multiple hours to film and edit and post a YouTube video. And yeah, that's where like I will choose staying in the flow of developing the app as opposed to making a video. And I think the thing I'm like trying to get to, which I haven't quite figured out yet, is to be doing both together, right? And it's like, how do I like document all this stuff and film this stuff as I'm working on it? And again, when it's just me, like, how do I do all that? So I'm kind of thinking of like, what if I literally start like vlogging, like actual like traditional vlogging, where like it's basically just like a linear, storyline of day to day, week to week stuff. I might do that. It's something I'm considering because the workflow makes sense with how I'm working, and allows me to kind of document stuff as I go and kind of share things without having to have this whole big YouTube production schedule. So I'm thinking about it. And also when it comes to the YouTube schedule, I don't want to just like get into this rhythm of making videos just to make videos. That seems kind of dumb. I'd rather make videos when I have something to say. And if I don't have something to say for, a certain period of time, then I don't make a video. No biggie. I'm also adjusting the tooling that I use to kind of like run the business. So, again, I worked as a design consultant for the past 9 years, and I worked as a designer before that for a few years. And all of that stuff is in a team environment, right? So collaboration is like, one of the core components of that. And so the tooling that was used and the tools that I have used for a long time are collaborative tools, and because they're designed for teams. But I'm not a team anymore. I'm just me. And over the past year, like initially when I first started last summer, I just kind of kept using the tools that I've used for a while. But I'm in this stage right now where I'm starting to reevaluate stuff and starting to explore things that are, it's maybe like, hey, maybe I don't need to use this. Maybe this is like a little too overkill for a team of one. Or, hey, I get to pick the tools that I use. Is there something that I would enjoy more, that's more pleasant to use, or whatever? So I don't have anything definitive on that, but I am going through this period of like exploring some new tooling for kind of not everything, but a lot of stuff. So like there's just a basic admin of the business, from like financials to documentation to managing tasks and calendar and email and all this stuff. Then I have like some design tools. I have, there's the development tools I use, which really aren't going to be changing. But I'm evaluating stuff, seeing where it's going to shake out. The last thing, which I guess I didn't really learn this, but I more confirmed it, is that I am perfectly happy to work alone. And I think depending on who you are and your background, you may take that in different ways. Especially when I just shared that, like, one of the bad things is I don't have coworkers, right? But that's a trade-off. There's a trade-off to having, like, there's pros and cons to everything, right? So there's pros and cons to having coworkers, and there's pros and cons to working alone. And I knew, like, I had a pretty good idea that I would be okay working alone. And this year has confirmed that. Like, I am perfectly happy working alone, having kind of long stretches of time where I'm kind of just like heads down, doing stuff, not having a bunch of meetings and everything. It suits, I think it suits me, my personality, my working style, my working pace. And that doesn't mean I'm like antisocial, right? Like I talk to people, I see people on the weekends, go out to get meals and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like I'm just like hunkered down and I don't want to talk to anybody. But when it comes to work, I am okay kind of being alone and in the zone. There's just a lot of freedom that comes from that. Freedom and speed, to be honest with you. Like I'm able to change my mind on something pretty quickly, make a decision, and just kind of move forward without having to like build consensus and get everyone on the same page to kind of move in a certain direction. So so this is more like this confirmed what I had already thought, is that I am okay working alone. Now, this is just 1 year, so maybe after a couple years of this, I will not like working alone. We'll see, but this is the 1 year recap, and so far so good. Okay, so let's talk about some of the plans I have for year 2. So I have a couple large features that I either have planned or are very close to being planned, and some of them I've even like thought, like, is this a new app? Like they felt big enough where it's like, oh, is this a second app? It's likely I'm going to roll them into Sofa for a bunch of reasons, which I can make a video about that in future. But what's next with those is like, I got to prioritize them. Like, and which one do I do first? Which one's the priority? So I'm still thinking through that, because I have a few that are going to take a significant amount of time to build. But I think they're going to be very interesting and exciting additions to the app. Working through that one. Also, I don't think I'll get all of those done within 1 year, because they're actually kind of big. The next thing is just to continue growing the Sofa brand itself and just continue building awareness for the product. And that's something I've been trying to do since I started it, right? And there's free ways to do that. There's paid ways I've done that by doing sponsorships. This YouTube channel is really like the primary reason I was doing this YouTube channel when I first started, is like promote Sofa, right? And really get it out there. And that is still the primary reason, right? Like, hey, I'm I'm just selling you crap right now. That's basically what this is. But I do plan to continue doing, more YouTube stuff like this, but also paid stuff, paid sponsorships. Can you hear that? They're cutting the grass out there. But yeah, I want to continue doing, this kind of marketing for Sofa, and also some paid stuff too, over the next year, and just keep growing the brand, the product, and getting more people aware of it. Because I feel like it's not a product for everybody, but I feel like the more people that are aware of it and know that it exists, that's a good thing. And the last thing is I just want to keep investing in this YouTube channel. I think besides doing Sofa, this is the best use of my time. And I think this has been more valuable. The YouTube channel has been more valuable than any social media account I have and have put time into. And I enjoy this way more. This is way more fun to do than to be on Twitter or Threads or whatever. That stuff's like fine for a couple minutes and then it gets nuts. So I am just going to continue investing in the YouTube channel and see what comes of it. Okay, so now I'm going to get into some questions. So I put out on Threads, Instagram, Mastodon, and YouTube. Just if you had any questions about what I'm doing and how the past year has been, I put that out there and a bunch of people wrote questions. So I'm going to go through those, and I have them kind of categorized, and I'll have it linked or a timestamp so you can jump around as you want. But I kind of have them grouped together into some categories just to make it easier to go through these questions. So this first group of questions is around finances. So first question is from Michaela Karan, and it is, how do you plan your income? Because apps can be variable month to month. Yes. So my income, it does vary month to month because some months there's a spike and some months it's just, maybe not flat, but not as big of a spike, that kind of thing. The way I did this was before I went full time. So as of July of 2024, I've had the Super Sofa subscription for about 3 years. And so I have like 3 years of sales data. And before I decided to go full time, I had enough consistently predictable monthly income where I was seeing kind of like the average monthly income. So I felt comfortable to be able to say, okay, well, I'm at least making this per month, and then I can make plans based off of that. And over the last year, that average monthly income has gone up, which is great. But I do have like a minimum that I need to hit per month to be able to do what I'm doing. And so far, so good. This question is from Craig Osborne. Do you worry if Sofa's income starts to drop? And have you planned for that? This is kind of related to the previous question. So yes, Sofa's income could drop. I think this is actually the main power and benefit of subscriptions, where you can have, predictable income per month, per year, depending on the number of monthly subscribers, annual subscribers. And I know there's all this, I think it's kind of overblown, the hate towards subscriptions, but it makes doing this possible, and it makes planning for my own income, but then even like reinvesting into the business much more sustainable and much easier to do. So while it is possible that like there could be this mass exodus of Sofa customers at some point, and then, my revenue would drop per month or per year, I think that is unlikely. And I'm really, at this point, I'm only seeing the numbers go up. And, it's not like I'm spending every dollar that I get, right? So it's not like I make so much money, then I spend it all the next month. So I do try and smartly invest in the growth of the business at this point, and make somewhat intelligent purchasing decisions around gear, around marketing, around all types of stuff, the tooling that I need to use. So I don't worry too much about it, other than the fact that, like, at this point, I'm very invested in, like, the growth of the business, and not so much in, like, it's all going to go away tomorrow. So this next question is from Little Tanner 3. How do you handle health insurance? I am on my wife's health insurance. I had my own, well, not my own health insurance. So the previous company I worked for, I was on their health insurance. But this is the USA, and health insurance is very expensive. So I am luckily able to get on my wife's health insurance through her work. And to be honest, if I couldn't do that, I wouldn't be doing this, right? Like, because health insurance is just so expensive. And I'm very lucky to be able to get to be on my wife's health insurance. So some of you may think that's like cheating or something, but like, it's the way it is. Another question from Little Tanner 3. Any financial things from being an indie dev that you didn't expect before? Nothing major, because, again, I didn't go into this like blind. By the time I went full-time, I had 2 years roughly of sales data from the Sofa subscriptions. And I've been doing taxes for the business for multiple years at that point. So there really wasn't anything surprising or that caught me off guard in terms of, like, I had to pay for something. I guess maybe the one thing I had to get this year was I had to get like a business mailbox at UPS because of changes in the EU, where you had to, on the App Store page, like, you have to show a physical mailing address for the business. And I didn't want to put my home address. So that was an unexpected expense, but in the grand scheme of things, not that big a deal. Okay, another question, Little Tanner 3. Can you and your wife live solely off your app income? If so, could you have before you quit? Sorry, I can't read. The answer is no. So we are a dual income household, me and my wife, and we have been a dual income household since we got married, and that is, what it's going to be for the foreseeable future. And I think it's okay that, one income doesn't cover everything. I think it's more rare to have one income cover the whole house. So we are a dual income household, and we're a team. We share the load. Another question from Little Tanner 3. How do taxes work for App Store income? So this is going to vary depending on state, country, how you have the business set up, all that kind of stuff. So for me, the business is set up as an LLC, and that is a pass-through entity. So the taxes pass through to me personally, so I essentially pay personal income tax on the profits of the business. That's on a yearly basis. I work with a tax person to help do all of that stuff, and it's really, I think it's more complicated. It sounds more complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. But I'm not going to get into crazy detail about taxes. But essentially, the business is set up as an LLC, which is considered a pass-through entity. So I pay personal income tax on the profits of the business. So this next question is from Juan Carlos Chavez. So how did you go about your financial planning? Did it pan out the way you thought it would 1 year later? For example, did you have ample savings? Did you borrow? Did you have a partner that's helping out? So financial planning. So I talked about this a little bit in my video last year when I first went full time. And really, it was the only way I was able to do this. There was a couple of factors, but like my finances and like me and my wife's finances, like our finances had to be very good, tight, all that kind of stuff. So by the time that I went full time, like we didn't have any debt. We had a good amount of savings. Again, we were intending to continue to be a dual income household, and all of that stuff was like in a good spot. And I think, if I'm going to like give advice to people, if you're going to jump into doing something like this, it's like, don't have any debt while you're getting into this, right? Because there's so much, like, money just puts stress on any kind of situation, and especially the lack of money. And having healthy savings, not having debt, and having a dual income household has made all of this significantly easier. And it took time to get there, right? It's not like we never had debt. Like, we went to school, we had student loans, we had car payments, we've had credit card stuff in the past. Like, it took time to get there, but I think all of that was like good preparation and really the right infrastructure required to be able to do this full time. So next question by 650 in Discord. Was this self-funded or did you need help from investors? So this is all self-funded. No investors, no plans for investors. Don't really want investors, none of that stuff. I like this being a quote unquote lifestyle business, which I think some people say in like a condescending way. I think it's awesome. But yeah, this is all self-funded over the years. And honestly, like, it was funded by my job for a long time, where the money I was making from my primary job, I was taking that and putting a piece of it back into this business. But then once the business started to grow and it could reinvest in itself, that was pretty cool. So there's a couple questions around like happiness, stress, that kind of stuff. So this is from Michaela Karan again. Have you had fun since leaving your job? Yeah, this is the best job I've ever had. and sometimes I feel like kind of crappy saying it to people because my last job was really great. But I've worked so many jobs growing up. Like, since I was a teenager, I've had jobs. I've worked, at like a snack bar at a pool. I waited tables. I worked retail for a long time. And like, I've worked crappy jobs and I've had crappy bosses. And I am fully able to appreciate what what I have right now, which is I don't have a boss. I have full control over my time and the things that I work on, and it is not lost on me at all, and I love it. Next question is from Centine Light on Threads. I think I'm saying that right. How's the stress / satisfaction levels? Are you feeling challenged and happier being indie? So yeah, just kind of talked about this. But I'll talk about the stress part. My stress is significantly lower. In my previous role, I was a manager for like the past couple of years. I managed a team of designers, and there was a lot of pros to that stuff, but it just came with a lot of stress. And since just working for me, with me, all that kind of stuff, my stress levels are significantly lower. And I was asking my wife about this the other night because we were like, oh, it's 1 year since I've been full time, and she said she's noticed that my stress level has definitely dropped and it's much better. And then if I'm feeling challenged, definitely happier for sure. Definitely still challenged. Like, I am by no means like satisfied with where the business is. I'm happy with where the business is, but I'm not satisfied. And I think there's a lot of potential for more growth. There's a lot I still want to build for Sofa specifically. Like, I just have so many ideas for what to do with it. So I think the level of challenge is definitely still there, and it's something that I don't see going away anytime soon. I feel like if I get to the point where I'm not really like challenged by the work, then I may need to start looking at something else. But I'm very, very far from that right now. So there's one question about marketing from Nicholas Dirk. What have you learned about marketing an app in that year, given that its income now supports you? there's a lot of ways to answer this question. I don't know if I've learned like a ton about marketing this year, but I do know that marketing is expensive and can be very time consuming. And basically, like how I'm viewing marketing for Sofa is there's the free marketing and then there's the paid marketing. And the paid marketing, it's just expensive, right? You're paying to get Sofa in front of a certain audience. And I've done I've sponsored podcasts, websites, YouTube channels, and I plan to do more of that in the future. But all that has kind of been within like the tech Apple world, and I would like to start expanding out beyond that world a little bit, right? I would like, because Sofa's kind of a broad product where it can be great for people who are avid readers or who are super into video games or really into TV and movies or whatever. And I think there's ways to get in front of those different audiences outside of like just the tech bubble or the Apple bubble. I'm really thinking about like the thing that comes to mind is there's so much content around like people who love reading. So I would like to start exploring doing some paid stuff outside of the tech Apple world. And then for the free marketing, that's it's cheap. It's cheap in money, but it's not cheap in time. It takes a lot of time to do. And honestly, like me doing YouTube is marketing, right? If you really think about it, I'm talking about the product. I'm showcasing the product. I'm also, kind of sharing like my experience, which can be maybe entertaining or educational, but it's also a form of marketing at the same time. So I wouldn't say I learned anything like super new this year, but marketing is still a very huge part of what I do. So the next section is a bunch of questions around being an indie dev and that experience. So Michaela Karan asks, what do you enjoy most about being an indie dev? The level of control that I have over the work I do and when I do it that's it. That's my favorite thing. Next question, again from Michaela. What's the worst thing about being an indie dev? Probably the fact that I don't have people to bounce things off of, like ideas, strategy, or if I'm like stuck. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the video, but that's probably the worst part, right? Which is, I'm only one person. There's limits to that. There's pros and cons to it. So that's probably the worst part, I think. Craig Osborne, if you started again, would you have waited longer before going full time? No, I actually would have done it sooner. I think, I had in my head that I had to be at a certain revenue number with Sofa to be able to go full time. And then there were certain events that happened last year that made me reevaluate that stuff and kind of run the numbers. And it was like, oh, we can actually do this now. And I don't have to wait. And it was kind of like, oh, I probably could have done this 6 months earlier, maybe. So yeah, I don't have any regrets there. And I wouldn't have waited longer. I probably would have done it sooner. But all that's with like, I ran the numbers a lot and talked to a lot of people to get advice on like the pros and cons of this stuff. So I wasn't just like jumping into the deep end blind, and that there's kind of like this romantic idea of like, I'm going to quit my job and do my own thing. You have to be ready for it, and you have to do the right preparation. And I feel like I did that. Okay, I enjoy asks, biggest surprise. Biggest surprise. Maybe. All right, this is gonna sound like I'm bragging. I'm not bragging. But when I was at WWDC in June, so I had Sofa t-shirts made because I thought like, okay, if people know about the app, maybe they'll recognize it. They'll come say hello. I would say there was more people than I thought that knew about the app and actually said hello. And the funniest one that I'm thinking of is like, I'm at the, I'm at Apple's headquarters, and there's like a lunch break, and I went to use the bathroom, and when I come out, I'm walking around the side, and one of the security guards says, "Oh, hey, are you the guy who makes Sofa?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, I love that Apple." I'm just like, what the hell? The fact that like the security guard at the Apple event recognized Sofa and said hello, and it's just, that's awesome. And again, I'm not bragging. It's just, that was cool. Joe Piscavage asks, biggest regret? Go. Biggest regret? I mean, this isn't like a huge regret, but like not going full time sooner. I think I was ready before I thought I was, financially and all that stuff. So yeah, I would say that. Another question from Joe. Do you feel that you've successfully fulfilled the dream of quote unquote working for yourself? In some ways, yes, some ways, no. This past year, I would say this. So there's a certain financial target that I am going for with Sofa as like kind of the minimum, and I'm not there yet, and I don't feel like I've made it, and that's like the target I'm going for. So in some ways, I feel great that I'm doing this, and that I'm fulfilling the dream of working for me and having this level of control. But financially, there's still the targets that I'm shooting for, and so I wouldn't say I've like, what do you say, fulfilled the dream. I don't feel like I'm there yet because it's only been a year, and I feel like I have a lot more to do. So I don't feel like I've done it now, right? Like I feel like I'm doing it, but I haven't done it, if that makes sense. Little Tanner 3, do you find it hard to take vacations or time away from working on your app? No. And this is something that I used to have trouble with like stepping away from work, and taking time off. And, I used to equate time in front of the computer as time working. And that actually isn't always true. And, because a lot of times, like, you can be in front of the computer, but you're not really doing anything productive. You may just be like jumping between apps, or you keep checking email, right? But you're not actually doing anything. So, over the past couple of years, I've gotten better at knowing when I'm doing that kind of stuff where I'm not actually working. If I'm doing like the kind of like fake productivity, like I'm bouncing between apps, maybe organizing tasks or looking through email, right? When that stuff starts to happen, I will take breaks. Sometimes that's like, I need 20 minutes. Sometimes I need like the rest of the day, or maybe I need like a couple days. It's fine. But I feel no guilt taking time off, taking vacations. And I used to say to people that I managed that, like, because they would feel guilt, especially like, if you're earlier on in your career, there's this weird perception that like you need to be working all the time. And I was like, you know what, like, you'll never regret taking time off. You're not going to regret taking that vacation, but you will regret not taking it and just, continuously working endlessly. And honestly, I think it makes my work better by not always being in the mix of it. Like, that's why having a hobby is so important. That's why like hanging out with family and friends is important. That's why, I don't know, just like reading a book or something, or just like going for a walk, like all that kind of stuff matters, because even if you're not aware of it, your brain is still kind of working on stuff. And those other experiences will give you, I think, a richer perspective on the work that you do, as opposed to just solely focusing and keeping your nose to the grindstone all the time. Another one from Little Tanner 3. Anything in particular that gave you the courage to take the leap to work on your app full time? There wasn't anything that gave me the courage. It was more like, could this work? And that's where When the conversation got serious with my wife, where I'm like, hey, I think it's time to do this. It became more like, okay, what does that actually look like? What does it look like? Number one, financially, so like looking at the numbers, but then what does that look like for us on like a weekly basis or a monthly basis or a yearly basis? And because like even the payment schedule is different for me now, where I would get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and now I get technically a paycheck from Apple like roughly once a month, right? Depending on the payment schedule. And all of that, like there was this weird period of like you look at the numbers and everything, yes, this looks like it will work, but there's the experience of it, which is much harder to plan for because you don't know what it's going to feel like. And I remember that was really the I guess the scary part of it for both me and my wife, which is like, okay, logically this works. We've talked to a bunch of people about the pros and cons of this. What's it going to feel like? We don't know until we do it. And I remember being maybe a few months into it, 2 or 3 months, and we were both surprised at how okay things were and how like it didn't feel that different for us in a way, which was, I guess, surprising in a way, but also just very reassuring. And it was just like, all right, that's good. So it shows like our preparation worked, even though it's hard to prepare for the kind of like emotional stuff and how it's going to feel. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but that's the best I can do. Little Tanner 3, anything you wish you knew before you took the leap? I guess I wish I knew what it would felt like emotionally to do this, just day to day. But like, I don't think that's possible to know. But other than that, I don't think there's anything. Another one from Little Tanner 3. Besides your app not making enough income to support you, is there anything that would make you not want to work for yourself again? At this point, no. I've made jokes to people this year that like I think I'm ruined, and I don't know if I can ever go back to working for someone else. Like this is for the type of work life that I want and just life in general that I want. This is what I've been working towards anyway. So I don't want to go back right now. That may change in the future. Maybe once I'm 5 years deep into this, maybe I'll be like, yeah, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. I kind of doubt it. Yeah, this is nice. Another one from Little Tanner. If you could go back in time, would you take the leap sooner? If so, what would you tell yourself? So you took the leap to full-time to indie dev. I kind of already talked about this, but I would have done it sooner because I think I was ready. I just didn't fully know it because I had a certain like number in my head that I had to be at before that, but then it was actually okay that it was under that number. So yeah, I would do it sooner. What would I tell myself? Yeah, just run the numbers sooner or more often to be like, can I do this now? This question is from Dylan Mason. Is it lonely? Who do you bounce ideas off of when you're stuck? I think I heard you were a designer in a previous career. Can you describe that transition? Yes. Is it lonely? No. For me, I'm okay being alone for long stretches of time. It doesn't bother me. I'm definitely more introverted, so being alone is like nice for me. But I do love being with other people too. So, who do you bounce ideas off of when you're stuck? I do have some friends that I can reach out to if I'm like really stuck on something. But I really try not to bother them because like they got their own lives going on and work and stuff like that. So unless I'm like really, really stuck, I will try and figure it out. And I talked earlier about how I've been using, AI tools like ChatGPT and Claude to help, especially with like code related stuff. Those have been very, very helpful to kind of work through like bugs I'm trying to fix, or other coding related things that are, maybe the documentation's pretty thin, or Stack Overflow is not being helpful, or whatever. Those have been pretty helpful. My transition from a designer to doing indie development. I mean, I learned. So I went to school for graphic design. Then started doing, I guess what you would call like UX, UI design, software, that kind of stuff. And that's what I did professionally for probably close to like 13, 14 years. And during that time, I learned more and more about development. It's simple, like starting with HTML, CSS, and then learning some JavaScript stuff. And then in 2007 is when the iPhone came out. I remember just being like, I want to do that, but I didn't really know what that was. And I tried to learn Objective-C, which was like before Swift, and I just like really struggle with it. Even today, like I'm not an amazing developer. I struggle to grasp a lot of the concepts. It just takes me a long time because I'm a designer. Like my brain works better with design stuff, much faster. I'm much more eloquent when I talk about that stuff. And then when it comes to development, it just takes me longer, and that's fine. But that's because like my brain doesn't naturally just digest that information, so it takes a lot of repetition. But yeah, so I just over the years just learned more and more. And when Swift came out, that really helped to allow me to like dive into iOS. And there's so many great resources online, like free resources on YouTube alone to just learn stuff. And it was honestly a very slow, gradual process to doing this. And then when I made the jump last year to doing this full time, I'd already been doing it for a while on the side. The business was making money. And I think me becoming a developer, it made me a better designer. So this question is from 26 Mitch. What are the most stressful periods? What are the most joyous periods? And what's the ratio between good times and bad from your experience? I would say the ratio is like mostly good with some stress. Stress I'm not like stress free with this job, right? I would say the most stressful periods are probably right before like big launches. So in April, I released Sofa 4.0, which was a huge, huge update. Lots of new features and stuff that I've been, testing with beta testers for months. But there's just so much new there. And even though there's, a decent amount of beta testers, I'm sharing stuff on YouTube, getting feedback. You don't really know how it's going to be received. I'm also like, I hope there's no crazy bugs in there that's going to really make things horrific for people. But again, that's why I do beta testing, because like I have a public beta for Sofa because of that stuff. Like I can't test every scenario myself. That's impossible. So having a bunch of beta testers is really helpful. So, but that's probably the most stressful stuff, is like right before a big launch and like as it's happening, because you're like, I'm like kind of holding my breath to be like, I hope it's okay. The most joyous periods are sometimes like I just get really nice emails from people that they're just like, man, I've always wanted an app like this. I really enjoy it. I find it really helpful. Like that kind of stuff's really nice because, I initially built the app really for me, and it's like keeping track of like books to read and movies to watch. Like that's something I was doing for a long time. And a lot of people do that, right? They do it in like, paper notebooks, or they use Apple Notes or whatever. Like I was using Evernote for a long time, and I just wanted something that was kind of purpose built for this. And when I hear other people are like, yes, this is exactly what I was looking for, like that's probably the best, because it's still wild to me that like I can make something, put it on the internet, and then people will use it and pay for it and enjoy using it. It just blows my mind. All right, this next group is around productivity type stuff. So, from Michaela Karan, how do you organize your day as an indie dev? So, I try and keep a basic like 9 to 5 ish schedule. And that's really to align with like what my wife gets home maybe around like 4 because she goes in early. So, I try and have the heavy stuff done by the time she gets home. So I kind of start wrapping the day up. Doesn't always work out that way, but I try to. So the way I organize my day is, I try and start work around 9. And most of my time is structured around the app, right? So whether it's the current release I'm working on with certain features or fixing bugs or whatever, that's the majority of my time. And I'm kind of generalizing here because like week to week it will vary. If it's like right after a big release, I will try and take a few weeks that are a little bit lighter where I focus more on admin stuff, maybe catching up on like support emails or writing documentation, or doing bookkeeping and stuff like that. But I try and have throughout the course of a year, I try and have most of my time focused on like the product and thinking about the product, like the strategy for like the next couple features that I'm going to work on, or like actively writing code. So that's what I try and do. And basically, it's like, I don't know, it's pretty normal where like my mornings I'll work, I'll take a break for lunch, I'll do more work, and then my wife starts to get home, and then I start wrapping up the day, start making dinner, all that kind of stuff. So it's actually pretty, I guess, like traditional, nothing crazy. Another question from Michaela: do you still feel as productive as your 9 to 5? Yeah, I do. I think that I don't. I guess like the next initial question you may think of: do I feel more productive or less productive? I don't know. I think it varies. I think the biggest difference is that I don't feel the pressure to be like as productive as possible every single day, every single week, right? There's like Cal Newport talks about like seasonality and work and how, going like full tilt every day all year is really not possible. Or if you're doing that, there might be something kind of wrong. So I feel like on the whole, yeah, I'm just as productive as, other places I've worked. It's just more satisfying because I'm using that productivity for something I truly care about, and it's for me. Centene Light, do you find it hard to maintain focus throughout the day? Do you find certain things helpful to maintain focus? Sometimes, yeah, it's hard. Just like anybody else, like sometimes I'm tired, or I don't know, like there's, I feel like I'll give a concrete example of, I launched Sova 4.0 in April, and I had been working on that release for close to a year, not a full year, but close to a year. And that was some of the hardest work I've ever done, especially on the development side. Like there was just a lot of new stuff and things that I never experienced before that I had to learn and figure out. And after I released it, and after the first couple bug fixes, because like I always know, like especially with like a .0 release, like there's gonna be bug fix releases, because like even with beta testing, you're not gonna catch everything. So I knew that after those first few, okay, get things stable after that. That basically I didn't want to like look at Xcode for, I don't know, a couple weeks, because I was just like, I was kind of sick of it. And I needed a break. I needed to do something else. I needed to like step back and get perspective, because I'd like been in the weeds for a long time. So that, so basically like my focus after those bug fix releases was like atrocious, right? But I think that's normal because I mentally needed that break. So, I focus more on admin work, or maybe like, I don't know, like I didn't work. I took time. I actually took some time off during that, like not even traveling, just like I'm off. Like I'm not working these days. And that was really nice. And then what's funny is like when I take those stretches of time off, coming back to work is always a little tough because you have to kind of like worm yourself back up into the work, especially like when you're warming yourself back up into maybe heavier work, like a big new feature or even fixing bugs sometimes, depending on what the bug is. So yeah, sometimes I find it hard to focus. When that happens, though, the thing that helps me is I will pick like the easiest thing to do, and I will start from there. So I think it's called like I feel like I've heard this called something like the snowball effect or something, where all I want to do is gain momentum to start doing stuff. And this is like the opposite of some people start with like do the hardest thing first, right? I think this is called like eat the frog. Depends on your style, your personality. I prefer I'm going to start as easy as possible, and that can be as like I'm going to answer a support email easy, or I'm going to fix the simplest bug, or what I think is the simplest bug, and then slowly build momentum. And then pretty quickly after that, like maybe it's a couple hours or a couple days of doing that, I'm kind of back in it, and then I'm fine. Little Tanner 3 asks, do you find it harder to concentrate or to get motivated to work when you work for yourself? No, I don't. I actually find it easier. There's very little distraction, especially like when you work in a team environment. It's very easy to get interrupted, and those interruptions can be for good reason, right? There's meetings you have to go to. There's just a lot of stuff. So I actually find it easier to concentrate because like I can put on whatever music I want. I don't have meetings to kind of break up my day. I can have these long chunks of time to focus on stuff. Yeah, it has not been a problem. How do I get motivated? I kind of just talked about this, but like sometimes I'm motivated by like the idea that I have or the thing I'm working on where I'm like kind of pumped about it. Other times it takes a little bit of that momentum building to get there. But I also try and like listen to myself too. Like if I'm going through like a little bit of a slump where I'm just like, I'm not really feeling it, like maybe I need a day off. Maybe instead of trying to force myself at the computer to like figure it out, maybe it's like, maybe just take a day off, right? Go play Zelda or something, or go for a walk. Okay, so there's kind of like some advice style questions that came in. And take all this with a grain of salt, right? Like this is all my advice, but like apply it to your own life. You know, not everything that works for me is going to work for you. Michaela Karan asks, what would you say to someone just getting started as an indie who is wanting to go full time? I would say to get your finances in order, pay off all your debt, build a savings, have like 6 months to a year of savings in the bank if you can do it, and have revenue from the business already, right? Like I this is my opinion. I think if you just quit without like that infrastructure in place and you don't have any revenue coming in, or you don't have any savings, or you're already in debt, I mean, it might work out, but you're going to be crazy stressed the whole time. So I kind of waited for those conditions to be there, and it has made this first year a true pleasure. This question is from Elidazer. I'm sorry about that. When is the right time to leave work, I guess your job, and go full-time with your app? It kind of relates to the previous question, which is like definitely get your finances in order, have revenue from the business, and have a plan in place for like, you know, what are you going to do in 6 months if this doesn't work, or a year or whatever. But yeah, have your finances in order. Like, get rid of debt, have savings, and have revenue from the business. Make sure your expenses, look at your expenses too. Like, do you have a bunch of streaming services that you don't really need or want or whatever? See where you can kind of cut things out. And when you really look at your budget, and it's funny, like, so I have another video that I made a while ago because I sell like a spreadsheet template for personal budgets, because it's like that's something I use. Like, me and my wife use that, and it may seem strange that that's on this channel where I talk about indie app development, but like I actually think it's super related, because without having good personal finances, being a full-time indie app developer is you're playing on hard mode, and you don't need to do that. Next question is from Lloyd Kedzer. What tips do you have for someone that is trying to go indie while having a full-time job? This is all kind of similar to the other questions, and I'm repeating myself, but maybe it's important. Good finances and revenue from the business, I think, are, the more I say this, the more they're kind of like non-negotiable, right? Like, if your finances are not in a good spot, and if you don't have any revenue from the business, again, that's going to be really hard. Okay, so the next group of questions are around like code, the app sofa that I work on, that kind of stuff. Little Tanner 3, have you ever ran into a code issue you couldn't solve? If so, how did you handle it? Did you have other developers to help? Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit so far, but yes, that has happened multiple times. I do have some friends that I can reach out to who are very helpful if I'm like super, super stuck. And again, I try not to reach out unless I'm like, I don't know what else to do. Like, please point me in a good direction here. But like I said before, I've also found tools like ChatGPT and Claude to be extremely helpful. And I want to clarify, like, I'm not just like grabbing the code that they're giving me and pasting it in. I'm trying to put it in context to the problem I'm solving. And when I say that they've helped me solve problems, it's like they've helped me identify like where I should even look for the bug, right? So like, because sometimes you get a stack trace and it's just not helpful because you're just like, what? Like, where is the issue here? And those tools have been very helpful, and just I almost like talk to it back and forth and just keep feeding it more context and more information, and then it has helped me solve very, very tricky problems that I ran into. So from Little Tanner 3, do you have any anxiety launching a new version to the App Store? Do you have a test flight beta? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Every launch, there is low-key anxiety, except it's like if it's literally just bug fixes, then I'm fine with that. But like, yeah, there's always anxiety around launches. Mostly around like, it's like, I hope there's not some really horrible bug in here, right? And I do everything I can to make sure there isn't. And I really haven't had anything major, which is good, but you never know. Do you have a test flight beta? Yes. So I run a public beta for Sofa for this is one of the ways to mitigate those really terrible bugs that can sneak in, is I want to have people testing this stuff, not only for like feedback on new ideas and stuff to kind of make things better, but also to catch bugs and to, avoid shipping something that is not good. I have found the public beta that I run to just be the best, and the people who are testing, they give great feedback. They're very active in the Discord, and especially active when like something new is being worked on. So during like the 4.0 development cycle, that was super, super helpful. Little Tanner 3, do you write unit tests to help if you know of any code changes break other parts of the app? Have you had any situations where you pushed code that broke the app in some way or created a big bug? So how did you handle it? There wasn't anything that I pushed that was a big bug, at least not that I can remember. But last summer, board games got removed. So one of the data sources I used for the app was Board Game Atlas for board game data. And one day they just went out of business. And I was getting, emails saying like, hey, board game data isn't loading, all that stuff. And I looked, they went out of business, no notice, nothing. So that was a mad scramble to fix it as much as I could. And I was able to reach out to the developer of that service, and I got an extension on API access for, I think it was like an additional month or two. And so I hustled to try and build in a feature where it would save all your board game data locally. So when that API access went away, you still had all the data. And I was able to get that out pretty quickly. But yeah, that was very stressful. Another one from Little Tanner. Any bad experiences with customers that we can learn from? There hasn't been anything crazy. Most people are pretty great. People are nice. On the whole, people are nice. I know social media makes it look like people are not nice, but they are. And I get plenty of nice emails from people. And one of the things I actually really like is a lot of people will just email me by name and they'll say, hey, Sean, and blah, blah, blah. Right. I actually love that, instead of just thinking this is some big corporation with some support email that no one looks at. So that's been really nice. I would say the only negative experiences really are there's some people who are just allergic to paying for software or paying for apps. And they find it fundamentally repulsive that anyone would even charge for software. It's very strange, but those people tend to be very loud, and they are the ones who will mostly write the bad reviews on iTunes or send me, stupid emails or something like that. But I don't really care about that. That person was never going to pay anyway. I could have the cheapest app and they weren't going to pay anyway. So it doesn't matter. So it's, there's some people who are just not a fit for the product, whether it's Sofa or any other product. And sometimes they're going to be very loud and obnoxious in telling you that they don't like your product, or the fact that you charge is horrendous or whatever. But honestly, I don't really care, because, and that's not to be dismissive of them, but I'm not going to focus my time and energy on someone who was never a customer anyway, and who was never going to be a customer. There's nothing I can say to that person to convince them that, yeah, paying for software is good. So, I don't know what to tell them. 650 asks, how many hours did it take you to create Sofa? I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that question. Create the initial version. I created in 2017, I took over development and created a new version of the app. And I did that in 6 months. But the app was super basic, really, really, if you compare it to what it is today, that app, it almost feels like a completely different app. And really since then, it's just been countless hours of making things better, me improving as a designer, as a developer, as a product person, that the product itself getting better. I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands. I don't know how many hours are in a year. I have no idea. A long time. Another question from 650. Did you consider hiring someone versus building it yourself? No, I have not considered hiring someone. I did work with 2 friends for the first version of Sofa in 2015. And like I said, I took it over in 2017. Those people are still my friends. I still talk to them. Nothing bad happened. And as I've gone through this, I actually kind of love that this is a one-person business. And unless I was like really forced to do it because like say the business grew in some way that I couldn't scale with it, maybe I would hire people, but like I don't have any plans to do that at this point. So from Qualope, I'm not saying that right. Have you found yourself enjoying media much better than before after creating Sofa? That's a fun question. I would say no. I think my relationship to the media stuff is the same. I think this is this is not answering your question at all, but like it makes me think of what I love most about Sofa. And I think the feature that I get the most use out of is the logbook, where it literally is just like keeping track of the movies that I've watched, the books that I've read, the games I've played, because I kind of treat it like a journal, and I'll write little sticky notes to things. And now with like 4.0, since you can add anything to Sofa, like restaurants or hikes or places or YouTube videos or all this kind of stuff, like it's really for me, it's kind of opened up how I use the logbook even more. And so like I'm keeping track of like the restaurants I went to and if I liked them, and yeah, so I find it to be that logbook feature to be my favorite specifically for that. And I feel like the logbook, like I have a lot of ideas for that. I feel like that could be like its own app. But yeah, so I would say like it's made me more conscious of how I've spent my time, which, makes a lot of sense for what the app is. But the logbook specifically has, because I like looking back to see, there's certain years where I've read a lot of books and certain years where I've read like one or two. It's kind of interesting to see that and go, what was going on that year? Like, was that like a stressful year? Or was I just busy with other stuff? Like, what was it? So yeah, I find that kind of fun. All right, so that's it for the questions. Seriously, thank you for everyone who asked questions and shared that. That's super, super nice of you, and hopefully I gave you answers that are interesting and helpful. If you have more questions, just let me know. You can put questions in the comments. I'll do my best to either answer them below or maybe in a future video I'll do that. But at this point, if you've made it this far, good Lord, wow, thank you. If you made it this far and you don't know what Sofa is, it's my app that I work on, and it helps you be more intentional with your downtime. And you can do that by keeping a list of books you want to read or video games you want to play, movies to watch, and now like restaurants you want to check out, or places to go on vacation, or hikes you want to take, or YouTube videos to watch, like basically anything you think of. And I obviously love the app. I've been working on it for a long time. And if any of that interests you, or you know people who would be interested in something like that, I would love if you let them know about it, or you check it out yourself, because the people who support and subscribe to the app and give feedback and use it and all that stuff, like they make it possible for me to do this for a living and to make these YouTube videos, and I am very, very grateful for that. So anyway, thank you for watching. This is probably a long video. I am assuming, would this be an hour? Oh my God. So anyway, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below, and I will see you next time. Bye.